Hi, it's another Friday, another time for interviews. Today, I have expert handyman, Griffin, to talk to us about some home improvements, what we should DIY, what we should not. So let's get started. So, first, what questions should a consumer be asking when they're interviewing a handyman?
The best is for referrals. You gotta try and find something that they've done before that you enjoy. Maybe see it in person. If somebody's done some tiling or any trim that you want it to look nice, it's nice to have confidence that they're gonna do a very nice job.
So would you say a good handyman might have photos of the work that they could show you?
Yeah, definitely a portfolio is pretty good if they have that kind of technology they're going on, or at least referrals. Referrals are the best way from a friend that's used them before.
What about hourly versus bidding per job?
It's hard. People that do hourly jobs are, I would say, a bit less confident in how long it's going to take. So they don't want to lose out by bidding something, having it take longer than they expected, and lose out at the end. Same thing with materials. If they're going to supply materials, they don't want to need 12 2x4s and only have budgeted for 6. So hourly is good if you are going to be a project manager and be able to help them along, and at that point they're kind of an employee. Mm-hmm. Whereas bid, for the most part, if they say it's going to be $1,200, it's going to be $1,200. Whether it takes them 2 days or 12 days, that's up to them at that point.
So in terms of having materials included, would you say, one, that's something you should definitely be clear on before the job starts?
It's definitely something that when you start, you need to know if somebody's bidding a job, are the materials included? I prefer to have materials myself and buy them myself so I know what I'm using. So it's not the cheapest thing on the shelf at Home Depot, because usually that's just going to be junk. Mm-hmm. If you use, like say, putting it on a vinyl laminate flooring, if you buy the cheapest one, you're gonna go through a lot. There's gonna be a lot more waste. There's gonna be, you open the box and half of them are gonna be damaged, and when you go to put them together, they're gonna be broken. So it's nice to use a quality material and know what you're getting into.
So if I was interviewing a handyman, called somebody up, and he said, okay, I'm gonna bid, he or she, there's a few out there.
There's handy people.
Said, I'm gonna bid it for the cost of the job, materials included. Would you feel a little bit more comfortable if you were on the consumer side with that versus like someone who came in and said hourly you provide materials? Does that lean towards maybe someone who's a little more experienced?
Yes, definitely a little more experience if they're going to buy the materials themselves. And then they're responsible for getting them to and bringing them to your house. And they shouldn't run into any issues. If a customer supplies materials, chances are something's going to go awry and it's going to take a few more days than it normally would have. It's easier if there's one price. And that's, at the end of the day, that's how much it costs.
Now, what about timeline? I think anyone who has started any sort of repair project, whether themselves, contractor, handyman, has found that often it takes significantly longer. So how do you address that when you're bidding a job?
I bid the job and I think about it and how many days it's going to take me and how much I want to get paid per day and how much materials are going to cost and whether or not they're available. Go back to that flooring thing, if you need 10 boxes and it's going to be exactly the amount of square feet you need, well, if that's special order and it takes an 11th box, well, now you're waiting 2 weeks to get it and you're going to have your floor torn apart and trim everywhere, and it just, it's
So you should know ahead of time. How do you handle it if you are something happens and you're gonna go over your quoted timeline?
If I know I'm gonna go over my quoted time, that's on me, and I use that as a learning experience. I try not to do hourly unless it's something where it's a lot of little things like, helping somebody hang up a bunch of pictures and paint and a light fixture and a doorknob all in one day. Then hourly kind of works out, where there shouldn't be any issues. And if it is an issue, it's a quick run to Home Depot to get a different doorknob. But I feel pretty confident that everybody should know what they need going into it. And if you don't, then you kind of got to just play it by ear and go at it that way.
What else do we have here? Okay, so what kind of services do you personally offer? That's a good segue, because I know you were telling me recently about something where you were doing something for a little old lady. She wanted just lots of small stuff. What's too small? What's too big?
It depends on the person. Starting out, I'll take on pretty much any job that I think I can make money at and that is a good service. But big jobs are good too. You just need to have a bigger crew to work on them to get it done timely.
Do you have people that are like your go-to people if I contract you to maybe do a bigger job?
Yeah, I definitely have a few people that I've worked with underneath other contractors where I would hire them on as an independent contractor, come in, do the demolition if you're doing a kitchen or something, and then help me do the drywall and do that kind of stuff. And then I'd go and finish it so it maintains a level of quality while also getting done quickly.
Is there anything that's sort of outside of your scope, or just generally would you think outside of the scope of you're sort of jack of all trades? You know, I think sometimes we talk about plumbing or electricity.
There's definitely a lot of things that are outside of scope. Plumbing and electrical are things where you really do need a license to do those. Say even putting in a water heater. If you go to put in a water heater from 20 years ago to now, the plumbing is different, and because of the increased insulation they need. So you actually need to have a mechanical certification to do that because the venting is different even too. So it gets into a lot of, liability aspects where I can put in a water heater. I've done it, but legally, no.
Yeah, and then when, on my end, when you go to sell that and you disclose you've done work where permits weren't pulled, or, maybe it wasn't a licensed professional, I have to admit that I just recently learned that if you put in a brand new stove that is gas, you have to have a $400 and some permit with the city of Minneapolis for that, even if the gas line is already there.
That's it's a little bit excessive.
I didn't know that. I think lots of people just put in a new one and connect it.
Yeah, I mean, I do it in my own house, and there's some fine lines that are, the law is very strict on a lot of stuff, but if you get a permit, you have to do it right, and you have to pay somebody that does it right, so.
That has to be re-inspected. But yeah, definitely for those bigger items. So again, leading into our next question, what items should homeowners tackle themselves versus what do you see people overextending themselves, thinking they can do it themselves and then just...
There's a lot of really easy to get started projects, painting, drywall repair, tile backsplash, things that are more ornamental rather than, hard products in the house. And they're very easy to get into. There's, paintbrushes and paint rollers are pretty cheap to get into. So you don't actually, it doesn't take a lot of money to get into it. And you can get into it and you can get good results. It'll take you longer than somebody that's done it professionally, and you can get good results. There's a lot of good YouTube videos out there for most every project, whether it's putting in a new light fixture, a ceiling fan, putting in a Alexa-controlled dimmer switch. There's a lot of really good information out there that if you're willing to take the time to do it, you can do it yourself.
What should people maybe think twice before DIYing? Outside of what we were talking about with electrical and plumbing, what are some things that are maybe harder than they
may seem? And you can do a lot of things and get it to be okay, but to get a really good product, you really need to have the experience. So say putting in a window trim where you have two pieces meeting together, that section right there where it lines up, won't look good unless you get it good. And even though it's supposed to be 90 degrees, it's not 90 degrees. So it ends up not looking the best if it's your first time doing it.
Yeah, so I think in some of the, with that woodwork, specialized saws, tools that are needed can get very expensive. I've seen people do some pretty crazy things with trim, drywall screws through trim.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a way to do something and make it work, but is it going to look good in the end? And is it worth your time to make it and spend hours doing something to have it not look great? When somebody else, you could have paid them $100 and it would have looked much better. Yeah,
and I think that's the thing is that sometimes these jobs can be more affordable than people think. It doesn't necessarily have to be. I hired someone who happens to be a friend, great painter, to paint the rest of my house for me because I was just done with it. And I'll tell you, looks way better than I would have done.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Could I have done it? Sure. But, didn't cost me that much more to have a professional do it. What do you think the basic tools a homeowner should have are, minimally?
Everybody should have paintbrushes, a caulking gun to redo their tub surround or anything like that. Screwdrivers, hammers, the basic toolkits you can buy at Home Depot are pretty good on a Black Friday where you spend $100 and you get the 200-piece kit. Those are pretty good. Power tools are, if you're going to get into it, you can get some really good small sets that will really help you do a whole bunch of stuff and it'll really pay off at the end. If you're going to spend $500 to pay somebody else to do it, or you can buy a $300 set of tools, and at the end of the day, you can do a lot more projects with those tools than just that one that you started off with.
Mm-hmm. And just sort of having the right tool. If you have a screwdriver set instead of one screwdriver, and you're not trying to jam the screwdriver that doesn't quite fit into the hole.
Definitely. I started off doing automotive on high-end Italian cars, and the right tool makes such a right difference, and I find the same thing with working on houses. I have probably 10 different putty knives, all different sizes, because they make a big difference if you use the right one. Can I get it done with just one? Yeah. Is it frustrating? Yes.
Yeah, and I will say on that topic, if you are going to DIY, I would strongly recommend having like a local hardware shop that you can go to. I recently had to put in a new door, and it was, for reasons I will not get into, not simple without special ordering a door, and I decided I would retrofit a new door, and I made maybe 5 trips to our local hardware store and went in and just threw myself on their mercy, like, do you have this tool? And tool rental, too.
Tool rental's a big one.
Yeah.
I mean, even for me, just for storing a tool, I will rather rent it than buy it because of the fact that I don't have to maintain it. I can leave it there. I can go pick it up the next day when I make sure it's there. With floor sanding, that's a good one for somebody to get started on. If you've got a new house that you take up the carpet and there's some old hardwood, you can relatively cheaply rent all the tools and the sandpapers and get a pretty decent product out of it and save a lot of money.
Yeah, and most tools that you rent are not too terribly expensive, especially if you just need them for a day or so.
Yeah, you can do, I know there's a lot of specialty flooring places that rent all the tools, but most Home Depots or the small hardware stores that have rentals will rent you a drum sander and the other sander, and you can get it done.
Yeah. So what else do we have here? Oh, what's the craziest thing you've seen in a house?
Old houses are weird. You see a lot of randomly done things where they've moved a wall 40 years ago and now there's a door that goes to nothing. Or there's a duplex I worked on. They put in a staircase for the upstairs unit that was in the back, and there was just an extra room that nobody knew was there. That kind of stuff.
Wow. What about weird stuff in walls?
Usually not a whole lot of weird stuff in walls. Old newspapers. That's probably a big one.
I heard recently that there used to be little holes in people's medicine cabinets for razors, and so sometimes they'll open walls and it'll just be like razor blades.
And the disposable razor blades you replace. It's definitely a thing. I haven't noticed it myself, but usually I've worked on something that's been remodeled since that was a thing.
Yeah. You've worked on a house recently where I found a secret hot tub into our purchase of the house.
That house is unique.
Yes. We were through inspection. We were well into it, and we found a secret hot tub. So there is a lot of stuff that can be hidden in houses. Okay, so last thing I want to talk to you about is you make very cool custom concrete countertops.
I do. That's what I got into when I first started working on houses.
So what does that, I think that polished concrete for sure, very hot right now. Tell us about concrete countertops. What's it like? Are they porous, easy to clean, easy to install?
Concrete countertops are basically the same as any other stone, a granite or a marble. They take a little bit of maintenance. You have to seal them and keep that seal nice. Otherwise, they will be porous. They're a relatively cheap option if you want to do it yourself. That's how I got started. I made one for my house. Erica sold me a concrete house, and so I figured concrete countertops.
I didn't even.
Yeah.
It is a concrete house.
And you can do a lot of really cool custom stuff with built-in sinks where it flows right from the sink up to the countertop. and the backsplash is one piece, and it's all making a mold and being able to do really cool stuff. You can do different colors. I'm doing one, hopefully this spring here, that's going to be a white concrete with red glass in it. So when you polish it out, the glass shows through the top of it. And they've got a red and white tile floor, so it should look pretty cool. I've got plans to build one for a friend of mine that is going to be backlit with LEDs.
Ooh,
So it actually has fiber optics in it.
that's pretty crazy.
It's going to be for his outdoor bar top next to his pool.
Yeah, it gives you a lot of flexibility.
Mhm.
But logistically, and I know we've talked about this before, you have to build the mold.
There's two ways to do it. You can make a concrete countertop in place, which is easy because you don't have to lift it. You can just pour the concrete, but you're not going to end up with as smooth of a surface as easily, and it's going to be a lot messier. The only reason I would ever pour a concrete countertop in place is if it was very large, say a 30-foot long bar top at a restaurant. But you're getting it to the point where it's going to be a mess, and they're doing construction anyway at that point. Concrete is quite a bit heavier, but you can also mold it so you have a very thick profile, but on the inside it's thin, and you maybe fill it with foam.
I did not know that.
So you can take the weight down while still having that heft, that really large, the scale of it. It's really big.
If someone was interested in getting a custom concrete countertop from, say, someone like yourself, what would you quote them square footage wise, price per square foot?
Square footage wise, it's relatively on par with a marble. You're looking at about $15 a square foot to start, and that's for something very plain, gray, and just polished out.
And then obviously it goes up from there.
Oh yeah,
you need your LEDs.
Once you go really in depth, you can do inlays of like brass parts into it. It's really cool. Any knickknacks you want to actually have in it, you can do it kind of like that too. Some fun stuff.
Well, I have to say that of all the referrals I give out, it is the hardest to find a reliable handyman. I've had some crazy handyman stories, up to a handyman almost getting into a fight with one of my tenants because he was nuts. So it really is a hard thing to find someone who you can trust, who is going to bid appropriately, and who's going to follow through, follow up with you, be there when you say. And yeah, Griffin's done a ton of stuff just out of the kindness of his heart for me, so I can totally vouch for him that he is great. If anyone is looking to get pretty much anything done, he kind of does it all. And the countertops are super cool. If anyone's thinking about that, I just have a pile of fresh brand new cards from him, so I'm happy to pass along his info to anybody, or just shoot me a message, call or text 612-729-7239. Do you want to put your number out there?
Sure. 612-564-9864, and it's Griffin's Home Services on Facebook and Instagram.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I'll do a link to your page in the comments.
Trying to get a nice portfolio going so everybody can see some cool stuff.
For sure. I just saw a cool picture. But okay. Well, thank you very much, and goodbye, everyone.